I booked the Airbnb last minute because all the hotels around the area were either too expensive or fully booked. I was traveling alone and just needed a place to stay for one night before continuing my drive the next morning. The listing wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. The pictures showed a simple room with a bed, a small desk, and a bathroom. There wasn't much description, only a short line saying quiet place, self-check-in. When I pulled up to the house, it was just before sunset. The place was in a suburban neighborhood, but something about the street felt empty. Most houses had cars in the driveway, but no lights were on. No one was outside. There were no kids playing, no people walking dogs, no noise at all. It felt strange, but I tried to ignore it. The house looked older than it did in the pictures. The lawn looked like it hadn't been cut in weeks. There were dead leaves piled near the front steps even though it wasn't fall. The windows had blinds but no curtains, and through them I couldn't see any lights or movement. Inside, the place felt cold and silent. Not the normal kind of silence, just empty, like no one had lived there in a long time. There was a slight smell, like a mix of dust and something damp. The hallway walls were bare except for one old picture frame that held a photo of some trees. Nothing personal or warm. My room was at the end of the hallway. The bed looked like it had been made in a rush. The pillows didn't match. There was a single lamp on the desk and a small trash can beside it. I set my bag down and tried to get settled, pretending everything felt normal. I wanted to shower and then get some sleep, but while I was unpacking, I noticed something weird. Across the hallway from my room was a door that wasn't shown in the listing photos. It had a metal latch installed on the outside, like it was meant to keep something in rather than keep someone out. The latch wasn't locked, just hanging loose, but the wood around it was scratched, like someone had clawed or forced at it before. I felt a cold feeling spread through my chest, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was just storage. Maybe the latch was to keep the door from swinging open. I tried to think of normal explanations. I showered quickly and changed into comfortable clothes. When I came out, I noticed something else. The latch on the mystery door wasn't hanging loose anymore. It was closed. I knew I hadn't touched it. My heart started beating harder. I stared at the latch for a long time, trying to convince myself I just didn't notice it before. But the thought didn't feel true. Something had changed. I went into my room and locked the door, even though it was just a small push lock, the kind that could easily be broken if someone wanted to. I sat on the bed scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in the house. Later in the night, when everything was dark, I heard the first noise. It sounded like something shifting in the hallway. Not footsteps exactly, more like weight shifting on old wood flooring. The house made small creaking sounds earlier, but this felt intentional. Slow, heavy, real. I held my breath and sat still, listening. Then I heard another sound. Something brushing against the wall, almost like fabric or skin sliding along it. It moved slowly past my door and then stopped. The silence after that sound felt worse than the sound itself. My chest felt tight and my palms were sweating. I wanted to convince myself it was nothing, but I couldn't. A few minutes passed. Then I heard the sound I feared the most. The doorknob to the room across the hallway turned. Slowly, metal scraping lightly, not forced, careful. I squeezed my eyes shut even though I was alone and the lights were off. The house was so silent that I could hear my own breathing. The doorknob clicked softly, like someone was trying to open it without making noise, but the latch outside kept it from opening. There was a pause. Then there were 3 slow knocks on the other side of that door. Not loud, not angry, just patient. That was somehow worse. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After a long time, maybe minutes, maybe longer, everything went quiet again. No footsteps, no creaks, nothing. But I didn't sleep. I stayed awake the whole night, staring at the door, waiting. Around sunrise, the house didn't feel as threatening anymore. The silence felt normal again. The light creeping through the blinds made everything seem a little more real and less like a nightmare. I grabbed my stuff fast. My hands were shaking, but I didn't stop. When I stepped into the hallway, the latch on the mysterious door was unhooked again. The door was open just a few inches. I didn't look inside. I walked straight out the front door, got in my car, and drove until the house was far behind me. Later that day, when I finally stopped for gas, I checked the listing again out of curiosity. It had been removed, gone completely. No photos, no address, no record I had ever stayed there except for the charge on my bank statement. I thought that was the end of it, but 2 days later, I got an email from Airbnb support asking me if I wanted to open a formal safety case regarding the property. They said other guests had reported concerning activity. That confirmed everything I already knew deep down. There was someone in that house. Not a ghost, not something supernatural. A real person. Someone living behind that locked door. Someone who waited until the house was dark and quiet. Someone who got close enough to turn a doorknob and knock, like they were checking if they could come out. I still don't know if the host knew or if they were involved. I didn't respond to the email. I didn't want to know more. But I think about it sometimes, how that latch was scratched, how the door opened without sound, how the hallway felt like someone was standing there in the dark. And the part that keeps replaying in my head the most, the slow, patient way they knocked. Not curious, not confused, just waiting. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap, close to town, and the pictures made it look modern and clean. The host had good reviews, nothing odd, nothing that suggested anything to worry about. The place was a small one-bedroom apartment attached to a house. The listing mentioned a separate entrance and complete privacy. I remember thinking that sounded nice because I just wanted some quiet time alone. When I arrived, the street felt strangely empty. Most houses had their curtains shut, and there were no cars parked outside. It was early evening, but the sky was already getting dark. The air felt heavy and cold. I dragged my suitcase down the short driveway toward the entrance. The house looked older than it did in the listing photos. The paint was cracked in some places, and there was moss growing between the cement slabs near the steps. I noticed a camera facing the door. It wasn't unusual for hosts to have security cameras outside, so I didn't think much. I unlocked the door using the code the host sent earlier. When I stepped inside, the place smelled faintly like bleach, as if someone had just cleaned it a few hours before. The floors were wooden and creaked under my shoes. There was a small kitchen to the right, a living area with a couch and coffee table in front of me, and a hallway that led to the bedroom and bathroom. I put my bag in the bedroom and looked around. Everything seemed normal, just quiet. The silence felt thick though, like the whole house was holding its breath. I tried brushing that feeling off, telling myself I was just tired from the drive. Later that night, I made something simple to eat and sat on the couch scrolling on my phone. The rain started outside, hitting the windows softly at first, then harder. The sound was calming, but after a while, I kept feeling like something was off. Every few minutes, I felt like someone was standing behind me or watching me from a dark corner. I turned around a few times, but the room was empty and still. I decided to get ready for bed. The bathroom was small, with one dim light that flickered for a second before staying on. The mirror looked older and had scratches along the edges. As I brushed my teeth, I could hear something faint, almost like quiet movement somewhere in the apartment. It sounded like soft steps or something brushing against the floor. I stopped and listened. Nothing followed, just rain. I tried to ignore it and finished up. When I laid in bed, I left the bathroom light on because something about the darkness in the bedroom made me feel uneasy. The rain got heavier, and the wind started pushing against the window. The room was cold, and I had to pull the blanket tight around myself. I finally started drifting off when I heard something again. This time it sounded like someone pressing lightly against the bedroom door from the other side. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. A soft, slow drag of something along the door. My body froze. I stared toward the door, waiting for the noise to repeat. After a few seconds, the dragging sound happened again, slightly louder. My heartbeat sped up, and I felt sweat forming on my back even though the room was cold. I forced myself to listen carefully, hoping it was just the wood shifting or the wind. But this wasn't random. The sound stopped, then started again, like someone testing how much noise they were making. I slowly sat up in the bed and held my breath. The noise stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I heard something much worse, Slow steps moving away from the bedroom door, down the hallway, toward the living area. My hands were shaking. I grabbed my phone and turned the flashlight on. The beam of light shook because of how badly my hand was trembling. I didn't want to open the door, but I also knew I couldn't just sit there listening to someone, or something, walking in the same place I was staying. After a long minute of breathing slowly and trying to calm my nerves, I forced myself to get up. I walked toward the bedroom door, keeping the flashlight pointed ahead. I turned the handle slowly and pushed it open. The hallway looked empty, but the air felt different. It felt like someone had been standing there just seconds earlier. I checked the front door. It was still locked. I checked the windows, all shut. I walked into the living room and noticed something strange. One of the kitchen drawers was slightly open. I knew I hadn't touched it earlier. I stared at it for a few seconds and felt a cold pressure in my chest. Something was wrong. I checked every inch of the place, even though every part of me wanted to leave immediately. Nothing was there. No one was hiding in the bathroom or under the bed. The place was empty, yet clearly something had changed since I arrived. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I left the lights on and just sat up, listening. The rain became softer, and eventually the sky started getting brighter outside. Morning finally came, and everything seemed normal again. The silence felt less threatening, and the apartment didn't feel as heavy as it did during the night. Before leaving, I looked around one more time to double-check I hadn't imagined what happened. That's when I noticed something I missed earlier. The bedroom door had scratches, fresh ones, near the bottom, like someone had used something sharp and dragged it slowly while testing the pressure. The scratches were the exact height of where I heard the dragging the night before. I packed as fast as I could. I didn't bother cleaning up the dishes or making the bed. I just grabbed everything and walked out. When I reached my car, I looked back at the house. Everything looked normal from the outside. Quiet, harmless. But as I got inside my car and shut the door, I saw movement in the window next to the Airbnb entrance, right where the camera was. Someone was standing there, behind the curtain, just barely visible. Watching, I drove away without looking back again. Later, when I tried to report it to Airbnb, the listing was already removed. No host name, no reviews, no trace it ever existed. To this day, I don't know if someone had a hidden entrance, if someone lived there without guests knowing, or if the host was watching the entire time. But I know one thing for sure. Something was in that apartment with me, and it wasn't supposed to be. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap, close to a hiking spot I wanted to see, and had decent photos. The listing showed a small guest house behind someone's home. It looked clean, simple, nothing fancy. The reviews were short and basic, nothing unusual, mostly people saying it was quiet. I didn't think much of it. I just needed a place to sleep for 2 nights. When I arrived, it was late afternoon and the sun was still up. The main house looked old, maybe from the 70s, with faded paint and a long gravel driveway. The guest house was behind it, separated by a thin patch of dry grass and a wooden fence. It didn't look like anyone had lived there full time. There were weeds growing around the steps and the windows were dusty. Still, the door unlocked fine and everything inside looked organized. The place had a small living area, a sofa, a table, and a tiny kitchenette with a microwave and a small fridge. The bedroom had one window facing the backyard. The bathroom was small and narrow. The air smelled a little stale, like the place hadn't been aired out in a while, but I didn't care. I dropped my bag, opened the window in the bedroom to get some fresh air, and sat on the bed scrolling my phone. Everything felt normal. After settling in, I walked outside to stretch my legs. The backyard was large, mostly dirt and dead grass. There were trees near the fence line, tall and dark. Behind them was just open land stretching out toward low hills. There were no other houses nearby. It was quiet, almost too quiet. The air felt heavier the longer I stood there. I ignored the feeling and went back inside. By the time it got dark, I was sitting on the couch eating snacks and watching videos on my phone. There was no TV, so the silence around me felt louder. Every small sound inside the guest house seemed sharper. When the fridge kicked on, I jumped a little without meaning to. I laughed at myself, but the laugh felt forced. Around 11 p.m., I decided to go to bed. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and laid down. The open window in the bedroom let in cold air and the faint scent of dirt. I could hear the wind pushing through the trees outside. First, the sound helped me relax, but after a while, there was something else mixed with it. A steady, slow noise, like footsteps moving through leaves. At first, I thought maybe it was just some animal. A raccoon, a stray dog, something normal. But the sound didn't wander like an animal. It stopped. Then it started again. Slow, steady, deliberate, like someone walking. My body tensed without me deciding to. The sound kept moving, circling the back area behind the trees. I couldn't see anything from my angle, and the window screen blocked most of the view anyway. I stayed still, listening, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Then I heard something closer, the crunch of a shoe on gravel. My heart started beating faster. I shut the window quietly and backed away from it. The room suddenly felt too dark and the air felt thin. I didn't turn on any lights because I didn't want anything outside knowing exactly where I was in the house. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the window, waiting. The footsteps stopped again, and the silence after them felt worse than the sound itself. Minutes passed. I couldn't tell if the person, if there even was a person, left or was still standing out there. At some point, I slowly laid back down but kept my eyes open. My body didn't fully relax. It felt like something was just watching and waiting. At some point, I fell asleep, but it wasn't deep sleep. Every time I drifted off, I would wake up again because the place made small creaking noises. My body stayed tense the whole night. In the morning, the outside looked normal again. Sunlight made everything feel harmless. But when I stepped out onto the grass, I saw them, shoe prints. Not old ones either, fresh ones. They circled the guest house, stopped under my window, and then led back toward the trees. My nerves spiked, but I tried reasoning with myself. Maybe the owner was walking around. Maybe someone was checking something outside. But the prints were right under the window I had opened. I didn't see any reason someone needed to be standing there. Part of me wanted to leave right away, but I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. I had planned the hiking trip and didn't want to waste it. So I locked everything carefully, double-checked the windows, checked the door twice, and left for the day. The hike helped clear my head for a while. The scenery was nice, and the sunlight made everything feel normal. But as the day got later and I drove back, something inside me started tightening again. I didn't want to go back, but I didn't have anywhere else to stay. When I got back to the Airbnb, nothing seemed touched. The door was as I left it. Nothing inside looked different. I tried to act normal, showered, ate food, scrolled my phone, but my brain wouldn't settle. Night came faster than I expected. This time, I locked the bedroom window and pulled the curtains tight. I turned on a lamp and left it on. The silence outside felt heavier than yesterday. I lay on the couch instead of the bed because it felt further from the window. I tried staying awake, but eventually I got tired. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I woke up suddenly, not from a sound but from a feeling. A second later, I heard it. Soft, slow gravel footsteps outside, coming from the side of the guest house, moving toward the back. My breathing turned shallow. I stayed perfectly still. Something touched the back door. Not knocking, more like trying the handle. A slow metal click. I froze, staring at the door even though I could barely see it from the couch. The lock held. Another small rattle. Then silence. I waited. Time didn't feel real. My throat felt dry and I barely breathed. Then I heard movement near the side window. A faint scraping sound, like someone dragging something along the wall. I grabbed my phone and dialed emergency services, but I didn't hit call. I waited to see if I actually needed to. After a long pause, the footsteps slowly moved away. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't panicked. It was slow, like whoever or whatever was out there wasn't scared of being caught. I didn't sleep again. When the sky finally started getting lighter, I packed everything in less than 5 minutes. Before leaving, I checked the back door. There were marks on the handle, scratches, fresh ones. I didn't bother leaving a message for the host. I just drove away. Later, when I got back home, I checked the listing out of curiosity. It was gone. Deleted. No host name. No reviews. Nothing. I don't know who was out there, or how many nights they'd been doing that before I arrived. All I know is when I think about those footprints and the quiet way whoever it was tried the door, no yelling, no rush, no fear, it felt like they already knew nobody would stop them. And if the door hadn't been locked, they would have walked right in. Sometimes I wonder if they were waiting for someone who forgot to lock it, someone who didn't wake up in time. I booked the Airbnb last minute because I needed a break from my routine. It was a random decision. I had a few days off work, and instead of staying home and wasting them, I thought I would go somewhere quiet. The listing showed a small apartment attached to an old farmhouse on the outskirts of a small town. It was cheap, private, and available immediately. The photos looked normal: plain furniture, old wooden floors, a small kitchen, a queen bed in a simple room. Nothing about it stood out. When I pulled into the long gravel driveway, dust rose behind my car. The farmhouse looked older than I expected, maybe early 1900s. The Airbnb was on the side of the house with its own entrance. The yard around it was big but uneven, with patches of tall grass and weeds. There were no other houses close, just fields stretching out with a thin line of trees in the distance. I parked and carried my bag inside. The air felt stale, like no one had opened the windows in a while. It smelled faintly like old wood and something else I couldn't identify. The inside looked almost identical to the pictures, just older and more worn. The couch had indent marks like someone sat in the same spot every day. The rug looked faded. The floorboards creaked with every small step. The silence felt heavy. I walked around, looking at everything. The bedroom had one window facing the open field. The curtains were thin and looked like they came from a thrift store. There was a bathroom with a weak light and an old mirror with scratches on the surface. The kitchen had a small fridge, a microwave, and a couple cabinets. Everything worked, but just barely. After settling in, I opened a window to let some fresh air in. The breeze was warm and carried the smell of grass and dirt. There were no sounds except insects and wind. The quietness was nice at first. I spent the evening scrolling on my phone and eating snacks I brought. When the sun started going down, the place felt different. Shadows stretched across the floor, and the farmhouse looked darker and older. I turned on a few lamps, but the light wasn't strong enough to change the feeling. It just made the shadows softer, not gone. Before going to bed, I checked the lock twice. The door lock was simple, just one deadbolt. I didn't feel nervous yet, but something in me wanted to be sure it was locked. The bedroom was warm, so I kept the window slightly open. I laid on the bed and stared at the ceiling, listening to the quiet. At some point, I fell asleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, not because of a sound, but because of a feeling. The air felt different, heavier. I stayed still for a moment, trying to understand what woke me. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, steady footsteps outside the window. They weren't close at first. They sounded like someone walking across the field, not rushing, just moving. I tried to calm myself by thinking it was an animal. But as the steps continued, I realized they weren't random or uneven. They had rhythm, a human rhythm. My body tensed. I listened as the footsteps moved closer, flattening the tall grass. They stopped, right outside the window. I kept my eyes open and stared at the dark room. I could hear my own breathing and something else. Slow breathing from outside, close enough that it sounded like it was on the other side of the thin window screen. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. The air felt cold on my skin even though the room was warm. For a long time, nothing happened, just breathing. Then the footsteps slowly moved away, heading back across the field until I couldn't hear them anymore. I barely slept after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I expected the footsteps to return, but they didn't. When morning finally came, I sat up slowly and went outside. The sun made everything look harmless again. But when I walked toward the field, the grass showed a clear path. Something or someone had walked through it recently. The line started near the road, crossed the field, and stopped below my window. There were shoe prints, not animal tracks, shoe prints. I felt a wave of unease, but I tried to reason with myself. Maybe someone lived nearby and walked around. Maybe a farmer or neighbor. But the prince went straight to the window. Not the door, not the driveway, just the window. I spent the day in town trying not to think about it. But the longer I stayed away, the more I dreaded going back. Something about the place felt wrong now. Not haunted or supernatural, just wrong in a human way. When I finally returned before sunset, nothing looked touched. The door was still locked. The curtains were still closed. But the silence felt different, like the space inside the house was holding something. That night, I stayed awake on the couch with a lamp on. I told myself it was just in case I needed to leave quickly. My body felt tired, but my mind stayed alert. Around 2 or 3 a.m., I heard it again. Soft footsteps. This time they came from the side of the house, not the field. The sound moved slowly along the wall, getting closer to the door. My chest felt tight. My hands were shaking. Then the doorknob moved. Just a little at first, like someone testing it quietly. Then slowly, firmly. Metal clicked. My body froze. My breathing slowed without me trying to control it. The lock held. For a long time, the person outside just stood there. No talking, no knocking, no leaving, just waiting. After several minutes, the longest minutes I've ever felt, the footsteps moved away again. Slowly, calmly, like whoever was there wasn't rushed or bothered. Like they knew they could come back anytime. I didn't wait for sunrise this time. I grabbed my bag, keys, and phone. I didn't turn off lights or close windows. I just unlocked the door, stepped outside, and walked fast to my car. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the keys. As I backed out of the driveway, I checked the mirrors. There was someone standing near the side of the house. Not hiding, not running, just watching. No face visible, just a shape, still and patient. I kept driving until the house disappeared behind the trees and darkness. The next day, when I checked the Airbnb listing, it was still online, but completely blank. No reviews, no information, no traces of the original description. It looked like someone erased everything. I reported what happened, but nothing ever came of it. Months later, sometimes when I look at older rural listings online, I still see that same style of house. Same price range, same vague wording. Sometimes I wonder how many people booked it before me, and how many of them didn't wake up in time to hear the doorknob turn. I booked the Airbnb because I needed somewhere cheap to stay for a work trip. The company didn't cover hotels, so I had to find something on my own. Most places in the area were either expensive or booked, but this listing was still available and half the price of everything else. The photos looked normal, plain, clean, nothing fancy. It was a small basement apartment connected to a house. The listing said it had a private entrance and full privacy, which sounded good to me. When I arrived, it was late afternoon. The house sat at the edge of a quiet neighborhood, the kind where driveways were long and there were more trees than streetlights. The main house looked old but cared for, fresh paint, trimmed bushes, clean porch. The basement entrance was on the side, down a short set of concrete steps. The door looked older, a little weathered, but sturdy. Inside, the basement was cooler than outside. There was a small living area with a couch and a TV, a kitchenette with a microwave and a small stove, and a bedroom in the back. The place smelled faintly like cleaning spray mixed with something older, maybe damp concrete, but it wasn't bad enough to worry about. I unpacked a few clothes, set up my laptop on the small table, and tried to relax. My drive had been long, and my head felt heavy from the hours on the road. I sat on the couch for a while scrolling through my phone, then decided to step outside and get some fresh air. The weather felt warm and soft, like every typical summer night. The sky was starting to turn orange, and cicadas buzzed loudly from the trees surrounding the property. Nothing felt strange yet. When I went back inside, I locked the basement door out of habit, even though the neighborhood seemed safe. I microwaved some food I brought with me and ate while watching random videos. After a few hours, the basement felt colder, maybe because the air conditioning kicked in or maybe because basements always have a lingering chill. Before going to bed, I walked to the back room. The bedroom had a small window high on the wall, one of those narrow basement windows barely above ground level. The curtains were thin, but I kept them open a little because it made the room feel less closed in. I brushed my teeth, turned off the lights, and laid in bed. I fell asleep fast. I wasn't sure how long I had been asleep when I woke up the first time. It was quiet, but I felt unsettled for some reason. The air felt thick, like the room was holding its breath. I rolled over, got comfortable again, and eventually fell asleep. It couldn't have been more than an hour or two later when I woke up again. This time because of a sound. A soft scrape. I stayed still and listened. Another scrape. It sounded like something brushing against the outside wall. Not loud, not aggressive, just a slow dragging noise. My first thought was an animal, maybe a raccoon or a stray cat. But then there was another sound. A slow, light tap near the window. Not scratching, not random, just a tap. Then stillness. My chest tightened, and I stared at the ceiling, trying to convince myself it was nothing. The tapping stopped, but the silence after it felt worse. I lay awake for a long time, listening. Eventually, I dozed off again. Morning felt normal again. Sunlight came through the small window and made the room look harmless. But when I went outside later, I noticed something under the window. Footprints. Not clear ones, but depressions in the dirt, fresh ones. They led from the tree line to the side of the house and stopped right below the basement window. The ground was soft, so each print showed the shape of a shoe. Someone had been standing there. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the homeowner walked around checking something. Maybe someone walked through the yard. But the prints didn't continue, they stopped right at the window. That detail bothered me more than I wanted to admit. I could have packed up and left, but I convinced myself I was just overthinking. I forced myself to stay busy, worked on my laptop, went out to eat, tried to forget about it. When I returned at dusk, the basement felt colder than before. The air felt different. Not physically, but in a way that's hard to describe. Like the space knew something I didn't. I kept every light on that evening while I worked. It felt stupid, but darkness in that basement felt too heavy. When it got late, I hesitated before going to the bedroom. I locked the basement door again, checked every corner, then turned off most of the lights except one small lamp near the hallway. I got into bed and pulled the blanket up even though it wasn't cold. My body felt tense, waiting. At some point I fell asleep, but when I woke up again it was immediate, like my brain switched from sleep to alert in 1 second. This time I knew exactly what woke me. Footsteps. Slow ones. Not inside. Above me. On the main floor of the house. Each step was spaced out, heavy but controlled, like someone was trying not to make sound but couldn't avoid the floor creaking. I stared at the ceiling, not moving. Step. Pause. Step. The footsteps moved toward the area directly above the basement bedroom, right above where I was laying. Then they stopped. Silence. I held my breath without meaning to. Seconds passed. Maybe minutes. Then another sound. A slow metallic noise. My door handle. Not fast, not forced, just a slow turn, as if someone was testing how much noise it would make. The lock held. The handle stopped moving. Then there was complete silence. No footsteps retreating, no movement upstairs. Nothing. Just stillness. I didn't sleep after that. I stayed awake under the blankets until the first hint of morning light came through the window. As soon as it did, I packed everything. I didn't shower, didn't check cabinets, didn't take leftover food. I just zipped my bag and left. As I drove away, I looked at the house one last time. Someone was standing in the upstairs window. They didn't move. They didn't wave. They just watched as I drove down the long driveway back toward the road. When I finally got cell service, I opened the Airbnb app to report it, but the listing was gone. Not blocked or updated, completely deleted. No trace of the host, no past reviews, nothing. Like the place never existed. To this day, I don't know who was walking at night or why someone stood outside that basement window. I don't know how many guests stayed before me or how many never realized someone was quietly checking doors and watching windows. But I do know one thing very clearly. If that lock hadn't held, I wouldn't be telling the story. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap, close to where I needed to be, and honestly, I didn't think much about anything else. I just wanted a quiet place to stay for a few days while I worked remotely and got some time away. The photos online showed a small house with white walls, old wooden floors, and a simple bedroom. Nothing fancy, but good enough. The place was outside the town a little, surrounded by tall trees and long grass that looked like it hadn't been cut for a while. When I arrived, the weather was gray and cold, and the road leading to the house felt narrow and quiet. Too quiet. I remember thinking that there should have been more houses or cars, but everything felt empty. When I walked inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. It wasn't strong, but it was there. Old wood, damp air, and something else I couldn't put my finger on. The house was clean, but it felt like no one had lived there in a long time. The living room had a small couch and a TV that looked like it hadn't been used in years. The bedroom had a single bed with white sheets and one window facing the trees outside. The shower worked fine. The lights worked fine. Everything seemed normal, so I put my things down and tried to settle in. The first night passed without anything strange. I worked on my laptop, ate some food I brought with me, and watched a little TV before going to bed. But I didn't sleep well. I kept waking up every hour, feeling like something was off. At around 3 a.m., I woke up to complete silence. No wind, no cars, not even insects. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy. I stared at the ceiling and tried to force myself back to sleep, and eventually I did. The next morning, I felt tired and annoyed, but I blamed it on the long drive and the change of environment. I made coffee in the kitchen and walked to the window to look outside. That's when I saw it. There were footprints in the dirt near the back door. At first, I thought they were mine, but they were too big and the direction didn't make sense. They started near the trees and stopped right at the back door. The worst part was that the door had a faint smear on the glass, like someone had touched it with dirty fingers. I tried telling myself it was probably the previous guest, maybe someone doing yard work, something simple. But it bothered me the whole day. Every time I walked past that door, I felt something tight in my chest. That night, I locked every door twice. I checked the windows. I tried to sleep, but I kept hearing small sounds. At first, it was just the house settling, or at least that's what I tried to believe. But later, I heard soft footsteps outside, moving slowly on the gravel. They paused near the window. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the ceiling and waited. After a while, the footsteps faded away, but I didn't sleep again. In the morning, I checked the outside again. More footprints, fresh, bigger than mine and heavier, like someone had stood in the same place for a long time. I felt sick looking at them. I told myself I only had one more night before leaving, and I could handle it. I tried to distract myself the whole day, walking through town, sitting at a cafe longer than I needed to, trying to avoid going back. When I finally returned that evening, the house felt colder, like someone had left a window open, but everything was still locked. I sat on the couch, trying to watch something just to keep my mind busy, but I couldn't focus. I kept looking toward the hallway, then toward the back door. I could feel something building in me, like my body already knew something was going to happen. Around midnight, the sound came again. Soft footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, getting closer. My breathing got shaky. I turned off the TV so I could hear better. The footsteps stopped right outside the back door. My chest tightened and my palms felt sweaty. Then there was a small sound. Not banging, not knocking, just a slow drag of a hand across the glass, like someone was wiping it with their palm. I didn't move from the couch. I just stared at the shadow of the back door from where I was. After a long moment, the sound stopped. Then silence. A long silence. I stayed awake until morning, frozen in the same position. When the sun came up, I packed my things as fast as I could. While loading the car, I forced myself to look at the back door one more time. This time, there wasn't a handprint. There was a face print. Not clear, but enough to see where the nose, forehead, and mouth pressed against the glass. Someone had stood there close enough to breathe on it. Someone had been watching. I left without checking out properly. I drove until I reached a gas station far away. I remember sitting in my car for a long time, trying to calm down, trying to understand what happened. Maybe someone local was messing with guests. Maybe someone had been living in the woods nearby. I don't know. I'll never know. All I know is that someone was there every night, watching me, getting closer, waiting. I never booked another remote Airbnb again. I still think about that place sometimes, especially late at night. I picture a stranger standing in the dark, not saying a word, just watching. And I wonder how long they stood there before I ever noticed. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap and close to the area I needed to stay in. I didn't think too much about it. It had 3 photos: a bedroom, a bathroom, and the front of the house. The reviews weren't detailed, just short things like, nice stay and good price. Nothing strange. I didn't need anything fancy, just somewhere to sleep for a couple of nights. When I got there, the place looked older than the photos. The paint on the walls outside was chipped, and the yard looked like no one had cut the grass in months. The windows had old curtains that looked yellow from age. The house felt quiet. Not the normal kind of quiet, but the kind where you feel like something should be making noise but isn't. No traffic, no voices, no dogs, nothing. Inside, the air smelled stale, almost damp. The hallway carpet looked worn, and there were dents on the walls, like furniture had been slammed around. The bedroom was small. There was a bed, a nightstand, and a dresser. The window had blinds that didn't fully close, so a little strip of outside light always leaked through. The bathroom looked old but clean enough. I tried to ignore how uncomfortable the place made me feel. I told myself I was tired and overthinking. The first night felt normal. I showered, ate a quick snack I'd brought with me, and laid down. I could hear the house creak, like wood shifting. That wasn't unusual for old houses, so I didn't worry. But after a while, I heard something unexpected. Footsteps. Slow, careful steps. They weren't heavy like someone walking normally. They sounded controlled, like someone trying not to make noise. I froze in bed, telling myself it was the house settling or maybe the piping. But the steps didn't sound random. They moved, paused, then moved again, almost in a pattern. I laid there listening, trying to figure out where they were coming from. It sounded like they were coming from above me. The house didn't have a second floor, at least not from what I saw in the listing or when I walked through it. My heart started beating faster, and my mouth felt dry. I kept staring at the ceiling until the noise stopped. After that, I stayed awake for a long time, waiting for the steps to start again, but they didn't. Eventually, I fell asleep. The next morning, I checked the Airbnb description again. It said 1 floor, nothing about an attic. But I noticed something in the hallway that I didn't pay attention to before. A square outline in the ceiling, a pull-down attic door, the kind where a ladder folds out. I didn't remember seeing it when I arrived. Maybe I was too tired to notice. All day, I couldn't stop thinking about the footsteps from the night before. I tried distracting myself by going out, walking around town, eating out somewhere so I didn't need to be in that house. I told myself I was acting dramatic, but deep down it felt like something was off. When I got back later, the house felt colder. Not just physically, but the kind of cold where you feel it inside your chest. I set my things down and tried to relax, scrolling through my phone, but my mind kept drifting back to that attic door. That night, I stayed awake longer. I wanted to be asleep before anything weird started again. When I finally turned off the lamp and closed my eyes, I already felt uneasy. Not even a full hour passed before I heard it again. The same slow steps above me. This time, they didn't stop. They moved from one corner of the attic space to the other. My breathing got shaky. I kept staring at the ceiling, waiting for something to happen. Then I heard a soft sound, with sliding or scraping. It was faint but real. I opened my eyes wider, even though everything was dark. The steps moved again, directly above the entrance of the attic. Then everything stopped. Silence. I waited. Minutes passed. Then I heard a sound I'll never forget. Something lightly tapping the attic door from the inside. Not banging, not scratching, just tapping, steady and slow, like someone testing if the door would open. My heart was racing so hard I felt pressure in my chest. I didn't move. I didn't breathe loudly. I just laid there, staring at the dark ceiling, waiting for whatever was up there to stop. After a few long minutes, the tapping finally ended. But the footsteps didn't move away. They stayed right above the attic entrance, like whoever or whatever was up there was waiting. I didn't sleep at all that night. In the morning, I packed my things fast. I knew I wasn't staying another night. As I walked toward the front door, I stopped in the hallway near the attic. The ladder was down. Not all the way, just hanging halfway, like someone had started to pull it open but stopped. My stomach dropped. There was no way I didn't notice that before. The metal brackets were rusty, and dust had fallen on the floor under it. Something or someone had opened it during the night. I didn't stay to look. I didn't want to see anything standing above me in that dark hole. I grabbed my bag and walked out fast, not even bothering to lock the door. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely turn my car keys. I drove away without looking in the mirror. I reported the listing to Airbnb, saying something was wrong with the house. I didn't give details. I didn't want anyone contacting me or asking for more information. I blocked the listing from showing again. A few days later, curiosity got to me. I searched the address online. There was a news article, not recent but about 2 years old. A man had gone missing. His last known location was that house. He wasn't the owner, just someone renting a room. The article mentioned one detail that made my stomach twist. Neighbors said they thought they heard something in the house at night even after the man disappeared, like someone was still walking around, even though the house was empty. No one ever found him. I never went back to an Airbnb without reading every review in detail, checking every corner, making sure nothing felt wrong. But even now, sometimes when I try to sleep, I think about those slow footsteps above me and that attic ladder being pulled down while I was asleep. The house wasn't haunted. There was nothing supernatural. Something real was up there. Person. Someone who never left that attic. And maybe they still haven't. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap, close to the highway, and had decent reviews. It was supposed to be a small weekend stop before continuing my road trip. The photos made it look like a normal suburban home. A neat bedroom, a tiny living room, and a bathroom. I didn't pay much attention to the details, and I should have. When I arrived, it was late afternoon. The sun was already low, and the street looked strangely empty. Most of the houses had cars in the driveways, but no lights were on. No one was outside. No sounds of kids, dogs, or neighbors talking. The air felt heavy and quiet in a way that immediately put me on edge. I told myself it was nothing. I was just tired. The house looked older than it did in the photos. The paint was chipped, the porch had a few broken boards, and the mailbox leaned at an angle like someone had kicked it. I stepped inside and noticed that the air smelled musty, like the house hadn't been aired out in months. The wooden floorboards creaked under my weight, and the walls had scuff marks, like furniture had been shoved against them repeatedly. I shrugged it off, trying to convince myself I was overthinking it. I dropped my bag in the bedroom, which was small but manageable. The bed had mismatched pillows. The sheets looked clean enough, but they smelled faintly of damp. The window had blinds that didn't close all the way. Letting a strip of sunlight in that made the room feel colder than it should have. There was a small desk with a lamp, a chair with frayed fabric, and a dresser. Nothing else. I unpacked a few things and decided to check the bathroom. It was old, but the tiles were clean, and the shower worked. Everything seemed fine. I went back to the bedroom, turned on the lamp, and tried to settle in. That's when I noticed it. A door at the end of the hallway that hadn't been mentioned in the listing. It was a heavy, unpainted wooden door with a latch. The latch wasn't locked, but the metal was scratched, like someone had forced it open before. The door itself looked solid and out of place. I didn't know what was behind it. A storage room? A closet? But the scratches unnerved me. I told myself it was probably nothing, just a leftover from the previous guests or the host. I showered, changed into comfortable clothes, and tried to relax. As soon as I sat on the bed, I heard it. A faint sound from the hallway. It wasn't loud, just the soft scraping of something moving across the floor. My heart started beating faster. I stayed perfectly still, listening. The sound stopped after a few seconds. I thought maybe it was just the house settling. A little while later, I heard it again. This time it was more deliberate. A soft thump, then scraping. Something was moving slowly down the hallway. My stomach twisted. I wanted to convince myself it was outside noise, maybe someone walking past the house. But the sound was inside. It was coming from the direction of that mysterious door. I froze on the bed, my hands gripping the sheets. The air felt thick, heavy, like the room itself was pressing down on me. My mind raced, trying to come up with an explanation. Maybe it was the host checking the house? Maybe a maintenance worker? But the house had a self-check-in code, and the reviews didn't mention anyone being inside. The sounds grew closer. I could hear the metal latch on the door moving slightly, like someone had nudged it with their hand. My pulse was in my throat. I wanted to run, but my body wouldn't move. The sounds stopped for a moment. Then I heard 3 soft knocks on the other side of the door. Slow, patient, measured. I sat in complete silence, my breath shallow. The knocks didn't continue. Just one pause, one pause, one. It was almost impossible to believe someone could be so calm and deliberate in a house they weren't supposed to be in. Hours passed. I didn't sleep. I stayed awake staring at the door, waiting. Every time I thought I heard movement elsewhere in the house, my heart jumped into my throat. I didn't want to turn on the lights, but I also didn't want to leave the room. I felt trapped. Eventually, the first hint of morning light came through the blinds. It didn't make me feel safer. It just gave me enough courage to move. I got dressed quickly, packed my bag, and approached the door. The latch was hanging loosely, slightly ajar. Whoever had been there had left. I didn't check the room. I didn't want to see what was inside or imagine someone hiding there. I just grabbed my bag, unlocked my bedroom door, and left the house as fast as I could. I got in my car and didn't look back. Later that day, curiosity got the better of me. I searched the address online and found an article from a few years ago about a man who had disappeared while renting the property. The article mentioned that neighbors sometimes heard noises from the house, like someone was moving around, even though it was supposed to be empty. No one ever found him. The thought hit me hard. This wasn't a mistake. There was someone inside the house that night. Not a ghost. Not something supernatural. A real person. Maybe someone who had been living in that room all along, waiting for the house to be empty, waiting for someone like me to show up. I reported the property to Airbnb, and they removed the listing. They didn't give details about why, just that other guests had reported safety concerns. That confirmed what I already knew. There was someone in that house, and I had been lucky to get out without being confronted. Since then, I've been careful. I check every corner, every door, every unusual detail before staying anywhere. I still think about that latch, that door, and the slow, patient knocks. Sometimes at night, I imagine someone is still waiting behind that door, patient and silent, knowing the house is empty again. I can't unsee it, and I can't forget it. The entire experience made me realize that danger isn't always obvious. It doesn't have to shout or break things. Sometimes it just waits, silently, in a house that looks normal, in a room that seems empty until it's ready. And for one night, I was that close to it. I still travel, but I never book anywhere last minute anymore. I read every review, check the photos closely, and even drive by if I can before staying. That Airbnb taught me that appearances can be deceiving. A quiet, cheap, normal-looking house can hide someone or something real and dangerous. And that's a lesson I'll never forget. Even now, months later, when I think about it, I can still feel the heaviness of that hallway, the musty smell of the house, the sound of the latch moving, and those patient, deliberate knocks. Real, human, and terrifyingly close.